Well, welcome to another episode of Tea Time at PhysioX. Today we have a very special guest, Kathleen Murphy. She is an executive sports coach. She works with businesses, individuals, as well as high-level sports teams. And there's just so much to talk about today. So hopefully we can get into the nitty-gritty of some of the few things that you do and really highlight exactly how you help people in business and in the sports world.
Perfect.
Okay. So I normally don't use a piece of paper with questions, but because there's just so much to know, I feel like today would be an appropriate time to use some notes, okay?
I'm fine with that.
So when we met and we talked, there's this thing called neuro-linguistic programming.
Yes.
And first of all, what is that? And how do you use it for high-level sports team and with entrepreneurs in business?
Absolutely. Great question. And it was something that I didn't know what it was up until last year, just in terms of the reference of NLP. So a lot of people have heard of Tony Robbins. He's a
Yes.
famous motivational coach. So Tony Robbins uses NLP in his work. And I took a look at what he was doing, and I took a look at some of the challenges that some of my clients, particularly on the sports side of the house, were having that would be oriented towards having NLP help them. So NLP is the neuro is the brain, the L is the linguistic, which is communication, and the P is in programming, which you use scripts as a practitioner and coach to walk people through changing their subconscious appreciation and understanding for whatever it is that they would like to change. For example, if somebody doesn't feel like they have enough confidence, I have scripts and methods that I can use through the scripting to help increase somebody's confidence. An example of that might be, and this is a real example, is I have one client who's a basketball player who is going to be going into their senior year. They're in the process of trying to secure a scholarship to a college. And they were having some problems with their confidence, and it was impacting their ability to shoot the ball. It was problematic. And so their coach knew about me and reached out to me and said, hey, could you talk to one of my players? He and his family are interested in potentially working with you. I said, sure. So we started talking, this client and myself, and come to find out I needed to ask a lot of questions to sort of get to where we were, to figure out what he needed to sort of work on. Was there something other than confidence that was impacting his ability to get the ball in net? And it basically came down to just that particular item. So the NLP has been a type of, I'll call it therapy light. It's not really therapy, it's really more of a practice and using it as a tool to help people with different situations that they find themselves in. Maybe they're struggling with motivation. So what can we do to help motivate this person? Now, the way that it works is that the programming through these conversations that you're having that are sort of scripted will essentially talk to the person's subconscious. So as I'm using the scripting to talk to the person's subconscious, they're listening, they are reprogramming how their mind thinks, but more importantly, their physiology. So their physiology, after we get done with the scripting, we've locked in and finished the programming part, I might use a keyword to help them trigger the physiology that they want to have come forward. Say, for example, they're like feeling as if they're losing their confidence. They may say to themselves the word green, and their physiology will know based on the programming and switch their body and their mind back into enhancing and boosting their confidence when they need it, literally on the fly like that. And the scripting itself doesn't take that long. Usually most of the scripting takes about maybe 5 minutes to go through. It's really quick. So particularly for athletes, they're looking for quick fixes. And usually you don't need to kind of, in our world we'll say tweak and redo the scripting again. You may only do it again because they want to elevate their confidence to just an even higher level in the spirit of this particular example. So, but for the most part, after I get done with running them through the script, they can continue to leverage this in whatever manner they need to.
Wow, so it sounds like you can help someone find a trigger, but a trigger for something positive versus
Yes.
something triggered that's maybe negative, like eating junk food or something
Exactly.
like
Well, a lot of people are practitioners that use it specifically for things such as smoking cessation or overeating. They help people with challenges such as those. I don't specialize in that. That's not part of the work that I do. So my work is really more focused on working with predominantly the athletes, but as a matter of fact, last week I ran one of my scripts on a larger group, so you can do this with larger groups as well. So I had just under 25 people in a room, and we did an exercise where you basically have the people create their version of the perfect sort of doppelganger, which consists of all the elements of a person that would be them, that they can basically step into when they want to feel different and they want to feel really either more present or whatever it is that they're putting into this person that they're literally stepping around and into in their mind. But they could physically just step forward after I've gone through the programming with them and have those same feelings that they've just conjured up through their physiology and through the scripting, through their subconscious mind.
So sort of like understanding who's this person I need to be to accomplish this task. Let's say, for example, I have a big presentation coming up.
Perfect.
And I need to be that confident person and be able to speak in a way that is eloquent, but I'm not feeling that way.
That's right.
So I need something to help trigger it.
That's right. That's a perfect example. That is an example that I use with most of my business clients. Will typically have some kind of a presentation coming up that they're nervous about. Even if they're really experienced presenters, they may be nervous and they want to feel differently. They don't want to feel that nervousness. They want to be more focused on presenting the material in a really impactful manner. So this can really help them with that, which is, I think, just so much fun.
Yeah. So have you used this for yourself? Is this how you got into it?
No, I got into this because, so I'm a Gallup strengths coach, which means that someone would take a survey to find out what their top 5 strengths are out of a possible 34 strengths. Now, Gallup is what I've like to say the best kept secret. It's been around for over 50 years. There are now probably close to 30 million people in the globe that have taken the survey to determine what their top 5 strengths are. 85% of the Fortune 500 companies use this for professional development of their employees, but not a lot of people know about it. So 35 million people, yes, it's a lot of people, but just in our country alone, what do we have, 350 million? So a small percentage of our country has probably taken it, and not all of those people that have taken it from the US. But when I found out about the concept about 10 years ago, it was literally life-changing for me. And I thought...
The Gallup Strength Coach?
The Gallup Strengths Finder, coaching. I was at a tech company, and we were merging 2 teams, and we were told to do it in a time frame that was actually very unrealistic. So I thought to myself, I don't know how we're going to do this successfully. So the sales team was using a Gallup coach to help them to merge 2 teams by having people identify what their top 5 strengths are, and then leverage those strengths to reimagine the team and to have different people working with one another so that they were setting people up to optimally work best with one another instead of competing against one another. So I said, well, we need to do something like that for the marketing side of the house. So I went through that exercise, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I could see using this for a long time to come. I wonder if I could actually even do this professionally someday. I loved it so much.
So you were part of a team that was going through this exercise and just found just how valuable it was.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. And the best part about it is that our society is typically focused on weakness or problem solving, and this isn't that at all. It's a real paradigm shift in somebody's mind, because we instead have people focus on what their top strengths are and have them go from being good to amazing. So I do three things as a Gallup coach. I help people to name their strengths, and I do that by taking the assessment, which takes about half an hour, to claim their strengths, which is learning a language. So I'm teaching you how to leverage these strengths, both verbally and then putting them into full action, and then to be able to aim the strengths towards either a goal or goals that you have. So for me as a business person, and obviously working with sports teams, both sides of my business are very oriented towards goals. So it made a lot of sense, this sort of practice and the way that the Gallup is set up. And I've seen just absolutely miraculous outcomes from people. I've had people that also have had very severe mental health challenges that are also working with a psychiatrist or a therapist, or maybe multiple ones. And oftentimes I'll have them referred to me to help balance out and work in combination with the therapy. I'm not working on the therapy side, and I'm not a therapist, but I work in combination and help to support that person, to help them to appreciate their top 5 strengths, to get them to a better place.
I feel like
mentally.
Yeah, I think most people don't realize what kind of strength they have innately in themselves.
They don't, and self-awareness is one of the top things that everybody can become better at, to help them no matter what they do, personally or professionally in life. And it's so much fun to me. All my family has taken it. Everyone in my family and all my friends know what their top 5 strengths are. And it's, as I said, it's in language, so we can kind of talk about it in terms of, well, I understand why you probably did something like that, because it made your positivity or your woo or your individualization light up as a strength, and so it was very supportive of that. So the strengths are like muscles. If you don't use them, they're going to wane. And so it's a concept that really made sense to me, that I thought, well, someday if I were to start a business, I'm definitely going to become a Gallup Strengths coach, and become certified to do that.
Absolutely, and I know you have taken that leap.
I did
Start your own business. So tell me a little bit more about that. I know your business is Market Me Now, correct?
Market Me Too.
Market Me Too. Sorry,
it's confusing. That's okay. It's funny because originally I started my business many years ago. Yeah. I was coming out of being a tech marketer for 25 years, and I was doing a little bit of marketing, and I just didn't change the name. But then I thought, well, in some respects, it serves the business that I'm going towards, because it's about awareness, right? So it's Market Me Too. So essentially I'm helping people to market themselves, but in a different way. It's all related to self-awareness that can help them in lots of different scenarios.
Tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you are helping people discover who their authentic self is and bringing that to light and using that to help foster businesses.
Exactly. So I work with a lot of sales teams, because a lot of sales teams will often work in partner combos, and they'll work on, okay, you start the deal, you work on the middle part of it, and you close the deal. And so when you do that, you've got to get that combination right. So that's just an example of like a trio, but there are lots of different setup examples in sales. Some people are working individually by themselves, and they have a number and they've got to hit it. But I will help to set these people up along with their manager for success by ensuring that they are going to be focused on doing whatever it is in their role that is going to make them successful. So instead of focusing on, Brenda's terrible at analytics, so I'm going to just have her do analytics all day. Like, why would you do that? But sometimes people get put into situations where they're just saying, please don't do this to me. This isn't what I'm good at. And people are saying, well, you just have to do it. So instead, in that situation, the boss would find somebody that loves doing analytics, is really good at it. So it's not about ignoring weaknesses, it's instead either partnering with somebody that's better at something than you are, or focusing massively your attention in a hyper, very intensive and very positive manner in terms of making sure that they're going to be doing what they're good at and doing it really well in support of the outcome to be successful.
I mean, that makes sense because you, if you're never gonna beat someone who actually likes what they're doing
No.
in that task, even if
No.
you become really good at it.
Right, exactly. And it's so much fun to see people light up when they're doing something that they really enjoy doing or they feel really good about doing it. And it doesn't exhaust them. They in fact get energy from it. When people are put into situations where they're asked to do something that they're not strong at doing and they never will become strong at doing it, they're never going to really get better. And it's going to be a tough day for them to get through. So it's really important to understand making sure that you're doing things in the strengths world that are going to be supportive of like think of the strengths as a battery, and what do you do to charge up your battery? If you're like a Tesla, you got to plug in your car to keep it going. The battery will run down. It's going to run down faster if you're doing things that either maybe you're using your particular strength a lot, so your battery could go down, but your batteries could also go down because you're not using them. You may be in a role where you don't have an opportunity to do that. Now, it doesn't always have to apply to business or sports. You can use these same strengths, obviously, in your life, too.
Well, the question is now, when do you scale back? For example, let's say someone's not good at a certain organizational task. When do you decide that, hey, look, maybe it's best we take you out of that role, or when do you decide, hey, let's continue on this role, and maybe you will like it at some point?
Right.
Is there like a cutoff? It's like, no, I think we gave it a shot, and we need to re-examine.
So when you come across somebody that's in the wrong role and you ask them some questions, you very quickly find out that they're miserable. They're not having any fun. They know that they're not succeeding. They want to be successful, but they're not in a position where they're ever going to get better at what they're doing or be successful. So particularly going back to sales, for example, I've recommended to plenty of people's managers that they probably shouldn't have that person in the sales role. There are plenty of other roles within the company that they'd be better suited towards and a lot happier and probably a lot more successful. So it's a pretty quick situation if there's a role that's open, or at least if you could give somebody some motivation and hope that they can move into a role that's going to be better aligned with them. The Fortune 500 companies that I talked about, they're using and leveraging the knowledge of someone's strength so that if they get initially put into maybe a role that isn't proper for them, they're gonna look for a role to put them into so that they will be successful. And it's a great approach to having people be a lot happier in the work that they do.
This is so exciting because normally when we have a guest over, we're talking about health, we're talking a lot, well, we do cross over to sports, but we never get a chance to talk about business. And of course, my life, a big part of it is running the whole business. So
That's
this
right.
is a really nice breath of fresh air to dig into this topic.
So I do, thank you.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite things to do, I always tell people this is one of my favorite days, is when I do team strengths reveals. This is just a product and service that I offer to clients. And I just completed one for a team about 25 people last week. And these people came in from all over the place. And what we do is we determine what their top 5 strengths are. They take the assessment, and then they learn what one another's strengths are, and then they learn how to leverage those strengths. This was a sales team, and so their boss was thrilled because it was a fairly new team and it was a quickly growing team. They started out with about 9 people in January, and they're up to almost 25 people in July. So there were a lot of people that he hadn't been given a long enough opportunity to really figure out what they're good at because they hadn't taken their strengths. assessment until a couple of weeks ago. So now that he knows what these strengths are, I'm going to come back to him after I've revealed this information to him and the team to then help them to appreciate, how do I now fully leverage this, Kathy? I have these strengths. This is my job. What can I do? And I do that same thing for sports teams as well, because although somebody on a sports team might be assigned to a very specific role, there may be things that the coach is saying or doing that are completely demotivating that athlete. And they are doing it unintentionally, but how awful for both the coach not knowing that they're doing this and for the athlete suffering because this coach doesn't understand that one of their particular strengths isn't necessarily being leveraged. Let's say it's futuristic to help support that athlete to be successful in whatever sport it is that they're playing. And so when you help the coach to understand how to leverage properly the information based on that athlete's strength and put it into the context of the particular sport or the position that they're in, it's really almost magical to watch and see things unfold in terms of how that athlete will perform differently. So I'm all about optimizing performance for both non-athletes and athletes. And one of the things I think you were going to potentially, or you had asked me about this, you said, Kathy, why do you call yourself a people diamond polisher?
Absolutely, yeah. I saw those words and it was really attractive to see. I'm like, oh yeah, I get that. You just really kind of bring in the best out of people. That's kind of the initial feeling that I got from seeing it.
So sometimes diamonds aren't always sparkly, right? And I can liken that to people as well. Sometimes they're in a situation in life and maybe they were a lot more sparkly at another point in their life. Well, my job, or the way that I see the work that I do, is because I have the ability to understand someone's strengths really well. I look at those strengths as like facets, as if they were a diamond. And then I help to polish those facets by the coaching work that I do with that particular individual.
And previously we were talking about you being a diamond polisher.
Yes.
Right? So can we elaborate a little more? Like, when did you thought about that name? Like, how did that come to you?
Well, so having been a former marketer for many years, I often would have to come up with analogies to explain really difficult technology that people had never heard of, didn't understand. So I needed to come up with solutions to have people understand, why do we even need this technology that you're telling me about? How does this apply, and what problem are we solving? So for me, I wanted to take a concept that can be a little bit ethereal, although the Gallup Strengths concept is based on science, and it's backed by science, and they continue to do research and have done so for over 50 years. So that's what I really like about it. But going back to answering your question about how did I come up with the concept for being a people diamond polisher, I wanted to come up with something that would get people thinking, and that I could give them a visual that they could think about, that probably they could wrap their mind around to make sense if they didn't understand the concept of what it is that I do. So people know that diamonds are shiny and sparkly, and I see people that way, and their strengths make them really interesting, especially given the different combinations of strengths. But if one of their strengths isn't maybe being leveraged, and in the case of a diamond, if maybe one of their facets is like got dust on it or is dirty or something, they're not fully shining. So I want people to be able to shine as brightly as they can. So I came up with that as an analogy to say that I'm a people diamond polisher. Like, I look at people as diamonds, that they're all really special and just exceptional and strong, because diamonds are incredibly strong, and they use them in for industrial purposes, for cutting things that you can't even imagine that they could cut. So I liked the sort of play on that.
Oh, I love it, because we use analogies all the time here to help describe the body. Most people don't understand what's going on inside the body, so we have to use things that people can understand. Like, for example, I like to describe the knee like as a child,
Oh,
and
okay.
a child is only happy when the parents are getting along. And who are the
Yes.
parents? The parents are the hip, the parents are the foot and the hip. So
Oh, I like
those
that.
2 points, they have to be able to work together for the knee to feel great. And when they don't work together, the child in the middle is very unhappy. So that's how I like to use analogies in my own practice as well. I just think it gets people on the same page a lot faster.
Right. And people sometimes need that because I can tell by reading body language whether somebody has maybe a slight quizzical look on their face. Maybe somebody else might not notice it, but I then know that I'll need to, explain some information more to somebody. But that's a big part of my business. And what I do also is I do observations for both teams, for leaders, and both sports teams and businesses. And sometimes it's really funny. I'm always surprised, particularly like with sports coaches, because I always feel as if they're gonna say, no, no, thank you. I don't want anybody watching me and critiquing me, because they have people do that all the time. But it's not done the same way that I do it. I'm doing it in a very intentional and in a very comprehensive, productive way that isn't necessarily focusing on all your deficits. I'm looking
Right.
at opportunities for you doing that really well. But if you do this like in your business, right? If you move your arm this way instead of that way, it will feel better. So if you just do this, and then providing them with these opportunities for the information feedback that I do on these observations, is just, it's so fun when I do that for people, because I think that there's so much apprehension that they have in terms of, I have no idea what she's going to say, because they're used to being critiqued in a very negative way. But that's not how I do my work. My work is oriented around focusing on betterment, but not like tearing you down in the process of making you better.
Yeah, there's a positive light to kind of what your work is trying to accomplish versus just saying, no, no, this is bad, this is bad, this is bad.
Right.
Just taking what's good, amplifying that. And would it be safe to say just having the positive overpower some of the negative?
100%. I mean, people will remember, you could give somebody 100 compliments and they'll remember the one negative thing that somebody said.
Right.
And so how do you work around that?
Yeah. I would love a little bit of example, because I know we've been talking around this, but I would love to hear like an example of like a sports team or like a business owner,
Sure.
and how your work had really changed the outcome.
So one of the sports teams I was working with, which was I work with Division I and above and pro sports teams that engaged me, was a team that was very willing to try some different things. And I have a service called moneyballing. There was a baseball movie that was about
I
a
remember
real
that
team.
one, yeah.
Yep. That Brad Pitt was starring in, and they used analytics to determine different aspects of how to make their baseball team run better. I do that a little bit with the strengths orientation and information. So I will look at, say for example, a hockey team which has lines of people that commonly or uncommonly would work together. So based on a situation that a coach might need to change, let's just say the energy level is low and the team is losing that you're working with. One of the things that you can do is, and I refer to these as human teams, you can then call up that human team based on what their particular strengths are. Put these people that might not ordinarily be on that line out there to enhance and bring energy back to the team, so that they have an opportunity to go and try to score or do whatever it is that they need to do in order to increase the points to try to have a better chance of winning. And I call that moneyballing. Now, for a coach to do that takes a very high level of confidence in my ability. So I have to understand also the strengths really deeply to know combination-wise. It's like food and wine pairing. Some people, even if they know nothing about food and wine, will know that maybe mustard and chocolate may not be the best combination. You know, they'd say, that sounds terrible. But to know what combinations go exceptionally well together, that's where my expertise comes into play.
So this is, tell me if I'm getting this correctly. So you might be able to examine the whole team and say, for example, when the morale's low
Yeah.
and the energy is very low, this combination of players out there may be able to bring that up.
It does.
And the coach say, you sure you want to put, Sarah and, together?
Exactly, because they never would. It could be someone that's a starter and someone that sits on the bench and never comes off the bench. And now you're going to put them together out there. And they have to trust you to know that that's going to work.
Yeah, have you gotten pushbacks from coaches?
Sometimes it takes them a little time to warm up to the concept. They have to see some of the other work that I'm doing in order to feel they're ready. So I don't ever start off with it. This is something when you're in your business, right? When a client comes in and you're working with a patient, you don't necessarily start them off with the hardest thing that they'd be doing at the end of your session with them. It's kind of like what I would do. I have to lead into that, and that could take weeks in order to get to that level where I can say, okay, are you ready? Do you want to do this? And I remember watching one of my teams on ESPN, and I didn't know the coach was going to do this, but the coach had all of the information, and the team that they were playing against was pretty good, and they the weather was terrible. They were playing outside, and I thought, well, I don't know if they're going to do something like this today. I didn't know when they were going to do it and use this human teams concept. But I was watching, and I thought, wow, this. And I looked at my like roster, and I thought, that isn't a normal combination of people that are out in the field right now. Yeah. Now they were behind in points, and it seemed like they were kind of sluggish and slow. So the coach said, all right, let's give this a try, and sent these people out there. And I'll tell you, the end result of that game was incredible, not only because they won with such a large delta in the number, but this almost never happens with this type of team. I'm not going to give too much away here, but typically this is a fairly large team, and not everyone plays. This is a Division I team. This is just how it is, right? Everyone came off that bench that day. I've never seen that happen before. And it was remarkable. And it was because they were using the moneyballing human teams concept to make that happen.
That must have been so rewarding to see.
I was pinching myself. I could not believe what I was seeing. It was so exciting to see that.
Especially to see it works. Yeah, just a little bit
exactly. Little friend here.
Yeah, able to come out around the humid weather.
Exactly. So you can apply that same thing in business as well, because let's face it, sometimes there's low energy, right, on a team, morale's down, or let's just say you could apply this strategy-wise, right? Let's just say your business team or your sports team that you're competing against is outmaneuvering you. So there you can tap into the human team that's good with strategy, and ask them, what do they think? What are they seeing that the rest of the group isn't seeing? And I guarantee you they're going to tell you things that will really surprise you, and you probably never would have asked them, especially in the combination of the people put together to work on that. And this, especially in sports, right? Timing, you do not have time to sit around and have some tea and talk about it. You gotta act quickly, so you can with these people, because you're tapping into their number one natural strength to be able to do that.
Would you be able to apply these concepts in maybe like a hiring process as well?
In a what?
Like a hiring process before this person even comes into a team.
That's a good question. Not everyone was on board with doing that up until maybe the last couple years. Gallup finally said, you know, you could use this for hiring purposes. They were reluctant to use this for hiring purposes for a number of different reasons. Probably one of them being, you know, a legal reason in terms of saying, oh, well, we made our determination based on using this scientific research evidence to support the person that should be in this role should have these particular strengths. You don't have that, so we didn't hire you. You know, maybe you had all the other qualifications. So they were really reluctant to say you could use it that way. But they relaxed their thinking and said, we're going to let you decide. And if you can come up with maybe a persona for the strengths characteristics that you're looking for that may be more ideal than another characteristic of a combination, that's up to you. But I will tell you, there's no perfect combination of strengths. There really isn't.
Such as humans, right?
Right, exactly. And I will tell you that the teams that are homogenous don't perform as well as the teams that are diverse. So diversity is actually a much stronger strategy in terms of when you're bringing people onto a team. Teams that are too similar, if things aren't going well, things will potentially continue to not go well. They, conversely, could they go well with everybody being the same? Yes, but let's just face it, there are changes happening all the time. So if your team's not great at responding to change well, and most humans are not, they don't like change, it's going to be problematic. So having that diversity on a team is actually preferable.
No, I love that. And that's in line with what I think completely. One of our biggest core values that we really cherish is embracing change.
Yes.
I mean, we came into the field trying to create a massive change in the profession. And as we get in more information, as we try things that doesn't work, we're always going to change things. And we want to do it quickly too.
Yes.
And the teams have to really adapt to that.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
Which sometimes can be a little bit overwhelming because we have gone one direction and then we say, well, we're going to go this way.
Right.
And it can happen within a day, and we have to come up with a plan to bring us to that point.
Exactly. Yeah. And change is something that I do a lot of workshops. I speak publicly on lots of different topics, motivation being one of them, change management, communication, leadership. And when I was, evolving my business, one of the things that I realized that I needed to do to differentiate myself from other coaches out there was to write down and like share with others what I wanted to be able to convey to them when I might not be around to convey that. So I started writing, and I've published 3 books. My 3rd book was a book that was focused on teams, and I write under the my brand of Wisdom Whisperer. And it's a different format than most books because my stories in my books all have 50 stories. They're all 2 pages in length, and you don't have to read them sequentially. So I call it buffet reading. So you
like
serve up whatever it is that you need as a topic at that moment in time, and 5 minutes later you're done.
Yeah. And in addition to the 3 books, I perused your website, and I also saw you have a course offer for people who feels overwhelmed.
Yes.
Like, can we tell a little bit more about that? Because I think a lot of my audience would really appreciate having some tips around that from someone with your caliber of expertise.
Oh, thank you. I would say, at some point in most people's lives, they're going to feel overwhelmed, and it's how they respond to it and what tools do they have to help them to feel less overwhelmed, and what happens when they become overwhelmed. Do they just sail through the process of being overwhelmed, or do they have an anxiety attack, or just freeze and everything in the world stops and they just can't perform, whether they're a professional or whether they're a sports person or whether they're just an individual in life, and not necessarily in business or an athlete. And so I realized that I had content that could support helping people with this feeling of being anxious and dealing with challenges, that I could help walk them through a course over the course of 4 weeks that they could do online, so self-paced. They would meet with me in a group setting or potentially individually once a week for 4 weeks and get to an entirely different place after the 4 weeks of the training that I put together for them. And I've taken a number of people through this, obviously, and it's really fun. I should take a picture of them, what they look like at the beginning, because they just look so stressed and just, they don't look like themselves. And I take a picture of them, or I should take a picture of them after they get done with the coaching, and they just look so much more relaxed and happy and just are in a better place.
Why don't you give us a little bit of a preview of what kind of materials inside the course?
So there is content initially, of course, to help you to figure out what your top 5 strengths are. So I focus a fair amount of time on somebody's awareness and helping them to understand characteristics based on what their strengths are in terms of what some of their motivators and demotivators are that we talked a little bit earlier about. I'll also talk about things that they need to consider that are going to be motivational in terms of battery fueling for their strengths, understanding and knowing what to do in order to leverage their strengths in a way that is going to be the most beneficial to them. But I also talk about things relating to whether in fact they're a leader or not, having an appreciation for if you are working for someone that's a leader and you're struggling with maybe communicating with that leader, what are some of the aspects of taking a step or two back that might be contributing to making it not the best relationship at this moment in time, but it could be a better relationship based on what your strengths are, and what are some of the techniques and tools that they can use to apply to help enhance that relationship. Conversely, if they're a leader, if they're struggling with somebody on their team, it can work in the same way, but just kind of in reverse.
And it's only 4 weeks.
Only 4 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna get it. I saw it and I was like, ooh, it's interesting.
It's a lot of fun. So you were a guest on my show, Murph and Ian Filtered, and I use content from my show also to support those people that don't always like to read. So there will be some reading that people have to do. It's very light reading. I'll tell them that's maybe like 15 minutes of reading during the course of the week. So most people can handle that. If you're a slower reader, maybe half an hour or something to that effect. But it's all designed to kind of take you through 4 stages of getting you to a place of kind of working up to really having a full appreciation for who you are and capitalizing on that.
Well, I think so many people will appreciate having that insight on themselves.
Yes.
As well as athletes and business, and just any person that lives in society, I think can benefit from something like that.
It's true, and I work with people as young as, say, 14 or 15 years old up to, there's no real age limit. And I always say it really doesn't matter what age you are in terms of if you're seeking to find out what your top 5 strengths are. The earlier you learn it, sure, you're going to be better off because there's so many benefits to that, but you're still going to gain massive benefit to having an appreciation to fully understand who you are at any age when you find out what your top 5 strengths are. So there's no perfect time. I always say earlier is better, but if you happen to be 40 and you're taking your strengths for the first time, great. Well, you've got still plenty of runway to leverage that information in your favor.
Well, excellent. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your expertise.
You're welcome.
Now, could you let people know where can they find you?
Sure. Yes. So I have the company called marketme2.net. So you can go to my website. That's marketme2.net. And that's the best place to communicate with me. And there are opportunities for you to sign up on my online calendar if you want to talk to me about some of the services that I have to offer, or if you have any questions relating to the type of work that I do, whether you're a business or sports team. So that would be probably the ideal way to find out who I am. And you can watch some of my shows on there as well. And lots of opportunities for other information on there for people. Right. So thank you. Appreciate you having me on. This was delightful.
It's been a great time.
Thank you. Thank you for the tea. It's wonderful.
Yeah, perfect.